Ever replayed a conversation in your head, knowing exactly what you should have said, but only after it was over? The moment passed, the room moved on, and you were left carrying the weight of words that never made it out. Maybe it was a job interview where your thoughts tangled under pressure. Maybe it was a meeting where your idea stayed silent while someone else said it louder. Or maybe it was a personal moment, an argument, a boundary, a truth. You froze instead of speaking. Those moments don't fade. They follow you. They quietly rewrite how you see yourself. In today's world, thinking clearly and speaking well is no longer optional. It is a core life skill. Decisions are made quickly. Opportunities don't wait. And people often confuse speed with intelligence, confidence with competence, and silence with uncertainty. It's not enough to be capable. You have to be able to respond in real time under pressure when the spotlight is on and the stakes feel high. That reality creates a constant, invisible tension, especially for people who care deeply about doing well and being taken seriously. But here's the truth most people never hear. Freezing under pressure is not a personal flaw. It's a predictable biological response. Your brain isn't failing you. It's protecting you. The racing heart, the blank mind, the sudden self-doubt are not signs of weakness. They're signs that you were never taught how to manage your thinking when it matters most. Communication breakdowns are rarely about a lack of intelligence. They're about a lack of control in high-pressure moments. The ability to think faster and talk smarter changes how others see you. But more importantly, it changes how you see yourself. Conversations stop feeling like threats. Pressure stops stealing your voice. And when the moment arrives, the one you used to fear, you're ready. This is where that transformation begins. Chapter 1. The fear that freezes you. There is a specific kind of fear that doesn't scream. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It shows up quietly, tightening your chest, speeding up your thoughts, and then, without warning, emptying your mind. You know this fear well. It's the one that appears when you're asked a question you didn't prepare for, when all eyes turn toward you, when your opinion suddenly matters. In that moment, your body reacts before your logic does. Your heart races. Your breathing shortens, and the words you know you have somehow disappear. This freeze isn't a lack of intelligence. It isn't incompetence. It's biology. Your brain is wired to protect you from threat, and social pressure registers as one. Judgment, rejection, embarrassment. Your nervous system treats them like danger. So it shifts control away from the part of your brain responsible for reasoning and language and hands the wheel to survival mode. That's why you blank out. That's why you stumble. That's why later, when you're alone and calm, the perfect response suddenly becomes obvious. What makes this fear so powerful is the story we tell ourselves afterward. You replay the moment and attach meaning to it. You decide you're bad at speaking, that you're not quick enough, that others are naturally better. Each frozen moment becomes evidence, and over time, that evidence shapes your identity. You start anticipating failure before it happens. You speak less. You hesitate more. The fear doesn't just show up, it settles in. But here's the shift that changes everything. Fear is not the enemy of good communication. Unmanaged fear is. The goal isn't to eliminate that rush of adrenaline or that spike of awareness. Those sensations are signals that the moment matters. The people who appear calm and sharp aren't fearless. They're familiar with that feeling. They've learned how to stay present inside it instead of fighting it. The freeze happens when you resist what's happening internally, when you panic about panicking, when you rush your words to escape discomfort. Control begins when you recognize the sensation without judgment, when you allow your body to feel activated while keeping your mind anchored. That awareness alone starts to slow the spiral. Fear doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're engaged. And once you stop treating it like a problem, you can start using it as information. That's where real confidence begins, not in the absence of fear, but in your ability to move through it without losing yourself. Chapter 2. Why your mind goes blank. The moment your mind goes blank feels sudden, but it's not random. It's the result of a system overload. Too much pressure, too little structure, and an urgent demand for a perfect response, all at once. Your brain tries to do everything immediately, and when it can't prioritize, it shuts down access altogether. Silence becomes the default. One of the biggest reasons this happens is the hidden demand you place on yourself to be flawless. When you believe every response must be sharp, impressive, or complete, your mind searches for the perfect answer instead of a useful one. That search creates friction, and under pressure, friction leads to paralysis. You're not thinking, you're evaluating. You're not responding, you're judging yourself in real time. Another factor is speed. Modern conversations move fast, and we've learned to equate quickness with intelligence. So when a pause appears, it feels dangerous. You rush to fill it, but rushing bypasses clarity. The brain needs a moment to organize thoughts, and when you deny it that moment, it responds by giving you nothing at all. There's also the habit of thinking ahead instead of listening. When someone is speaking, you're already preparing your reply, imagining outcomes, anticipating reactions. By the time it's your turn, your attention is split. You miss the emotional core of what was said. You miss the entry point. So when the spotlight hits you, there's nothing solid to stand on. Blankness is not emptiness. It's congestion. Too many internal voices competing at once. The fear voice, the judgment voice, the outcome voice. Clear thinkers learn to quiet the noise by simplifying their objective. They don't ask, "What's the smartest thing I can say?" They ask, "What's the next true thing I can say?" That shift reduces pressure immediately. Thinking clearly under pressure isn't about speed, it's about direction. When your mind knows where to go, it moves. When it's searching everywhere, it freezes. Learning to give your thoughts a clear path is what turns silence from panic into pause, and pause into power. Chapter 3. Turning panic into power. Panic feels like a loss of control, but in reality, it's an energy surge. Your body is preparing you to act. The problem isn't the energy, it's that you don't know where to direct it. Without direction, that energy turns inward and amplifies fear. With direction, it becomes focus. The first step is reframing the sensation. A racing heart doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're alert. Tightness doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care. When you label these sensations as readiness instead of danger, your nervous system starts to cooperate instead of resist. The body follows the story the mind tells. Next comes pacing. Panic speeds everything up: your breathing, your thoughts, your speech. Slowing? Just one of those elements creates stability across the system. A controlled breath, a deliberate pause, a grounded posture. These small actions signal safety to your brain and restore access to clear thinking. Powerful communicators don't rush to respond. They create space. Space to think, space to choose, space to land their words. That space feels long to you, but looks confident to others. Silence, when intentional, changes the dynamic. It shifts control back to you. Finally, there is trust. Trust that you don't need the perfect answer to be effective. Trust that clarity beats complexity. Trust that you are allowed to think out loud, to start simply, to build as you go. Panic thrives on the belief that one mistake ruins everything. Power comes from knowing you can recover. When you stop fighting the moment and start working with it, everything shifts. The same situations that once froze you become manageable. The energy that once overwhelmed you becomes fuel. Panic doesn't disappear, but it transforms. And when it does, you realize something important. You were never powerless. You just needed a different way to engage. Chapter 4: The Art of Buying Time. One of the biggest lies about strong communication is that it has to be instant. We admire fast responses, sharp comebacks, and people who seem to speak without hesitation. So we assume that if our answer isn't immediate, it's somehow weak. That belief creates pressure, and pressure short-circuits thinking. In reality, the most effective communicators aren't fast. They're deliberate. They know how to create time without anyone noticing. Buying time is not stalling. It's structuring the moment so your brain can catch up to the situation. When you're asked a question and feel that internal jolt, your instinct is to fill the silence as quickly as possible. But silence isn't the enemy. Unstructured silence is. The difference is intention. Repeating or reframing a question is one of the simplest ways to regain control. When you restate what was asked, you're not avoiding the answer, you're clarifying it. At the same time, your mind is organizing a response. To the listener, you sound thoughtful. To your brain, you've just bought precious seconds. Another powerful method is acknowledging the complexity of the moment. A brief recognition like, "That's an important question," or "There's a lot to unpack there," lowers the perceived demand for instant perfection. It signals confidence, not hesitation. You're setting the pace instead of being dragged by it. Buying time works because it shifts you from reaction to response. It interrupts panic and replaces it with structure. Once you realize you're allowed to slow the moment down, pressure loses its grip. You stop performing and start communicating. Chapter 5: Pauses that command respect. Most people fear pauses because they confuse silence with weakness. They assume that if they stop talking, they'll lose attention or authority. The opposite is true. Strategic pauses don't reduce impact. They amplify it. A pause gives weight to what comes next. When you pause before speaking, you signal composure. You show that your words are chosen, not rushed. In conversations, meetings, or high-stakes moments, this creates a subtle shift in power. People lean in. They listen more closely. Silence becomes a form of presence. Pauses also regulate your internal state. When your thoughts are racing, speaking faster only increases chaos. A pause slows your breathing and stabilizes your focus. It creates a reset. Even a single second can bring clarity back online. The key is intention. A confident pause is calm, not apologetic. You're not searching, you're considering. If needed, you can name it. Let me think about that for a moment. That statement doesn't weaken your position, it strengthens it. When you stop fearing silence, you gain control over rhythm. And rhythm is what makes communication feel grounded, persuasive, and credible. Chapter 6: Say less, mean more. Clarity isn't about saying more, it's about saying what matters. Under pressure, people tend to over-explain. They add qualifiers, soften statements, and talk in circles, hoping clarity will emerge eventually. It rarely does. Powerful communication is precise. It begins with knowing your core point before you speak. Not every detail, not every justification, just the central idea. When you lead with that, everything else becomes optional. Vague language weakens impact. Phrases like maybe, kind of, or I think signal uncertainty even when your idea is solid. Direct language, delivered calmly, creates trust. It doesn't mean being aggressive. It means being clear. Saying less also reduces cognitive load. Your listener doesn't have to work to understand you. Your message lands cleanly. And when people understand you, they respect you. Precision comes from listening, simplifying, and trusting your point. When you stop trying to impress and start trying to connect, your words gain weight. Chapter 7. Reading the room instantly. Great communication doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in context. The same words can land differently depending on the energy, emotions, and dynamics in the room. Reading the room is the skill that allows you to adapt in real time. This begins with observation. Notice posture, tone, pace. Are people tense or relaxed? Engaged or distracted? Defensive or open? These signals tell you how to enter the conversation and whether to push, pause, or pivot. Many missteps happen not because the message was wrong, but because the timing was. Saying the right thing at the wrong moment can feel like failure. Reading the room helps you choose when and how to speak. If you're unsure, lead with curiosity. Asking a thoughtful question can reset the energy and buy insight. It shows awareness, not uncertainty. When you understand the emotional temperature around you, your responses become more effective. You stop forcing your voice into the space and start aligning with it. That alignment is what makes communication feel natural, intelligent, and impactful. Chapter 8. Confidence creates competence. Confidence is often treated like a personality trait, something you either have or you don't. But in real life, confidence is not the cause of strong communication. It's the result. And once you understand that, the entire equation changes. Confidence doesn't come from knowing you'll say the perfect thing. It comes from proving to yourself over time that you can handle imperfect moments and still be okay. There is a feedback loop constantly shaping how you speak. When you hesitate, hold back, or stay silent, you reinforce the belief that your voice is risky. That belief lowers confidence. Lower confidence increases hesitation. The loop tightens. On the other side of that loop is action. Speaking up, even when unsure, creates experience. Experience builds competence. Competence feeds confidence. The direction matters. Most people wait to feel confident before they speak. That wait never ends. Confident communicators do the opposite. They speak while uncertain, then adjust. They don't aim for flawless delivery. They aim for participation. They understand that clarity is often discovered mid-sentence, not before it. Competence is built through exposure. Each time you answer a question, share an idea, or hold your ground in a conversation, your brain updates its expectations. It learns that the outcome wasn't catastrophic, that you survived, that sometimes you were even respected more for trying. Over time, your nervous system stops overreacting because it has evidence. Preparation can accelerate this loop. Not scripted responses, but mental anchors, simple structures, reliable openings, phrases that help you enter a conversation without panic. These tools reduce uncertainty and reduced uncertainty allows confidence to grow. Confidence is not loud, it's steady. It's the quiet belief that you can engage, recover, and adapt. Once that belief sets in, competence follows naturally. And once competence grows, confidence stops feeling forced. It becomes familiar. Chapter 9. Thinking clearly under pressure. Pressure compresses time. It makes seconds feel smaller and mistakes feel bigger. Under pressure, your brain narrows its focus and scans for threats instead of solutions. That's why even simple questions can feel overwhelming in high-stakes moments. Clear thinking under pressure starts with redefining the moment. Pressure does not mean danger. It means importance. When you treat pressure as a signal instead of a threat, your response shifts. You stop bracing for impact and start engaging with purpose. One of the most effective strategies is simplification. Under stress, complexity collapses. So don't aim for depth immediately. Aim for clarity. Restate the question. Identify the core issue. Address one idea at a time. This creates momentum, and momentum restores confidence. Another key is slowing your internal pace. You may not be able to slow the room, but you can slow yourself. A measured breath, a grounded stance, a deliberate start. These actions stabilize your thinking. Pressure feeds on speed. Calm thinking feeds on control. Mistakes under pressure feel amplified, but they are rarely remembered the way you imagine. What people notice most is how you recover. Clear thinkers don't panic when they stumble. They reset and continue. That resilience matters more than perfection. Pressure will always exist. The skill is not avoiding it, but learning how to stay functional inside it. When you do, pressure becomes a stage instead of a trap. Chapter 10. The courage to speak up. Silence is often mistaken for safety. You convince yourself that staying quiet protects you from judgment, embarrassment, or rejection. But silence has a cost. Each time you hold back, you reinforce the idea that your voice doesn't belong. Over time, that belief becomes heavier than the fear you were trying to avoid. Speaking up requires courage, not confidence. Courage is action in the presence of fear. It's choosing contribution over comfort. Most meaningful growth happens exactly there. The fear of speaking up is rarely about being wrong. It's about being seen. Once you speak, you're visible, and visibility feels risky. But invisibility slowly erodes self-trust. You start doubting your value, not because you lack it, but because you never test it. A powerful shift happens when you stop asking, "What if I'm wrong?" and start asking, "What if this helps?" Contribution reframes the moment. It moves the focus away from self-protection and toward value. Start small, low-stakes moments, short contributions, questions instead of statements. Each act of speaking builds tolerance for discomfort. And tolerance is what turns fear into familiarity. Courage compounds. The more you speak, the easier it becomes. Not because fear disappears, but because it stops controlling you. Chapter 11. Handling conflict without losing control. Conflict is unavoidable. Avoidance feels easier, but it creates long-term tension and unresolved pressure. Explosive reactions feel powerful, but they damage trust. The skill lies in navigating conflict with control. Conflict triggers emotion. Emotion narrows thinking. The first priority is regulation. If you can manage your internal state, you can manage the conversation. Slow your breath, ground your posture, lower your tone. These physical cues Signal calm to both you and the other person. Listening is critical. Most conflicts escalate because people feel unheard. Acknowledging emotion does not mean agreeing. It means recognizing reality. When people feel understood, defensiveness drops. Questions are powerful in conflict. They shift the dynamic from opposition to exploration. They buy time, lower tension, and reveal intent. Curiosity disarms more effectively than argument. Boundaries matter. Calm does not mean passive. Clear, respectful limits protect your position without aggression. Saying what you will and won't accept establishes self-respect. Conflict handled well strengthens credibility. It shows maturity, emotional intelligence, and leadership. When you stay composed under friction, people trust you more, not less. Control in conflict is not about winning. It's about staying aligned with who you are while the pressure rises. Chapter 12. Using silence as strength. Silence has a bad reputation. In conversations, it's often treated like a mistake, something to fix as quickly as possible. We rush to fill it with words, explanations, jokes, anything to escape the discomfort. But silence itself is not the problem. Unintentional silence is. Intentional silence is one of the most powerful communication tools you can develop. When you speak immediately, you give away control of the moment. You react instead of respond. Silence, even for a few seconds, shifts the dynamic. It signals confidence, composure, and self-trust. It tells others you're not scrambling for approval or rushing to defend yourself. You're choosing your response. Silence also creates psychological pressure, but not on you, on the other person. When you don't immediately fill the space, people often continue talking. They clarify. They reveal more than they intended. They expose their real concern. Silence invites truth because it removes the safety net of constant noise. Internally, silence gives your brain room to work. Thinking requires space. When you keep talking out of fear, you interrupt your own clarity. A pause allows your nervous system to settle and your thoughts to organize. It turns chaos into structure. The key difference is intention. Silence, rooted in fear, feels tense and withdrawn. Silence, rooted in confidence, feels grounded and deliberate. The way you hold yourself during silence matters. Steady posture, relaxed breath, calm eye contact. These signals communicate that the pause is purposeful, not accidental. Silence is especially powerful in difficult conversations. When emotions are high, your words often inflame rather than resolve. A pause can cool the moment. It can stop escalation before it starts. It shows restraint, which often earns respect even from those who disagree with you. Learning to use silence takes practice because it challenges the instinct to perform. But once you're comfortable with it, silence becomes a shield and a spotlight at the same time, protecting your clarity while drawing attention to what truly matters. Chapter 13. What your body is saying. Long before your words land, your body has already spoken. Posture, facial expression, eye contact, and movement all communicate information, often more loudly than your voice. You may believe your message is clear, but if your body tells a different story, people trust the body. Under pressure, body language often reveals what words try to hide. Tension shows up in shallow breathing, crossed arms, restless movements, or avoiding eye contact. These signals don't mean you're weak. They mean your nervous system is activated. The problem arises when you're unaware of them. Awareness is the first step to control. Notice how you hold yourself when you're nervous. Do you shrink? Speed up? Look down. These habits are automatic, but they're not permanent. Once noticed, they can be adjusted. Small physical changes create large internal shifts. Standing or sitting upright opens your breathing. Slower movements calm your nervous system. Steady eye contact builds connection and credibility. When your body feels stable, your mind follows. Body language also buys time. When words don't come immediately, a thoughtful nod or steady gaze keeps the conversation anchored. It shows presence, even in silence. It reassures others that you're engaged, not lost. Reading others' body language matters just as much. Tension, withdrawal, or defensiveness signal how your message is landing. If someone leans back or crosses their arms, pushing harder rarely works. Adjusting tone or pacing can reset the interaction. Your body is not separate from communication. It is communication. When you learn to align your physical presence with your intention, your words carry more weight. You don't need to exaggerate or perform. Calm, controlled presence does the work for you. Chapter 14. Dealing with difficult people. Difficult people are inevitable. Every environment has them. The critic, the interrupter, the passive-aggressive voice, the person who never listens. These interactions are challenging not because of what is said, but because of how they make you feel. Triggered, defensive, drained. The first mistake people make is personalizing difficult behavior. Most of the time, it's not about you. It's about control, insecurity, frustration, or unmet expectations on the other side. Understanding this doesn't excuse poor behavior, but it prevents you from absorbing it. Control begins with regulation. Difficult people often rely on emotional reactions to maintain power. When you stay calm, you disrupt their strategy. Slow your pace. Lower your tone. Keep your responses simple. Calm is disarming. Questions are one of the most effective tools here. Instead of arguing, ask for clarity. Ask for specifics. Ask for intent. Questions shift the dynamic from confrontation to explanation. They force the other person to slow down and articulate instead of attack. Boundaries are essential. Being calm does not mean being passive. Clear boundaries communicate self-respect. Saying, "I'm not comfortable with that," or "let me finish my thought," establishes control without aggression. Boundaries protect your energy and your credibility. Not every situation needs resolution. Some people are committed to conflict. In those cases, disengagement is strength, not failure. Choosing not to engage preserves clarity and prevents unnecessary escalation. Handling difficult people well is a marker of emotional intelligence. It shows that you can remain centered even when others are not. Over time, this skill builds authority. People notice who stays composed when pressure rises. You cannot control others, but you can control your response. And in that control lies confidence, clarity, and long-term influence. Chapter 15. Becoming calm, sharp, unshakable. There is a version of you that handles pressure differently. Not louder, not more aggressive, just steadier. This version doesn't panic when attention shifts their way. They don't rush to prove themselves or shrink to stay safe. They pause, they listen, they respond with intention. This is not a personality type. It's a skill set, and it's built, not inherited. Becoming calm under pressure doesn't mean you stop feeling nervous. It means you stop letting nervousness dictate your behavior. You recognize the physical signs, the faster heartbeat, the alert mind, and instead of resisting them, you work with them. Calm is not the absence of activation. It's regulation inside activation. Sharpness comes from clarity. You stop overloading your mind with everything you could say and focus on what matters most. One idea, one direction, one honest response. When you trust that clarity is enough, you stop chasing perfection. And when perfection is no longer the goal, your thinking speeds up naturally. Being unshakable doesn't mean you're unaffected by criticism or conflict. It means you recover quickly. You don't spiral. You don't replay every word. You extract what's useful and let the rest go. Your sense of self is no longer tied to every interaction. That stability becomes visible. Others feel it. They respond to it. This version of you isn't created in one moment. It's built through repetition. Each pause, each breath, each decision to speak instead of hide. Over time, pressure stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a signal that you're present, a signal that you're engaged, a signal that you're capable. Calm, sharp, unshakable. These are not traits you wait for. They are outcomes of practice. And once they take root, your voice becomes something you trust, especially when it matters most. Conclusion: every conversation you enter is an opportunity, not to impress, but to show up with clarity, not to dominate, but to connect. Thinking faster and talking smarter was never about becoming someone else. It was about removing the noise that kept you from being yourself under pressure. You've learned that freezing isn't failure. It's a signal. That silence isn't weakness. It's leverage. That confidence is built through action, not waiting. And most importantly, that you don't need perfect words to be powerful. You need presence, structure, and the courage to engage. These skills don't change your life overnight. They change your moments. And moments, repeated, change everything. The meeting where you finally speak. The boundary you hold calmly. The pause that earns respect. Each one rewires how you see yourself. Growth doesn't demand perfection. It asks for consistency. Keep practicing. Keep noticing. Keep choosing clarity over panic. The more you do, the more natural it becomes. If this audiobook resonated with you, let it be a beginning, not an ending. Continue sharpening your mindset. Continue strengthening your voice. And when you're ready, move on to the next conversation, the next challenge, the next lesson, better equipped than before.